This is Antonio Barbeau, a young boy of only 14 years old and the murderer of his own family. At such a young age, Barbeau and his friend Nathan Pop decided to commit a heinous act that would change their lives forever. Their victim, Antonio's sweet and innocent great-grandmother, 78-year-old Barbara Olson. What could Barbara have thought of what was about to happen? Could she have suspected that her killer would be her own great-grandson? As we know, evil often lurks in unexpected places. It all happened at night. Barbeau and Pop broke into Barbara's house in Sheboygan Falls intending to rob and murder her. We could assume that their initial intentions were never so sinister, but not many vouch for that. Barbara realized what was happening, and as expected, the two young boys, driven by violence and fear, attacked her, delivering axe blows and hammer strikes until she was utterly broken. After the bloody crime, they attempted to place Barbara's body in the car trunk. Unsuccessful, they left her in the garage, covered with a blanket. Days later, her body was grimly discovered by the police. All the evidence pointed towards Antonio and his friend Nathan. Both were arrested, brought to trial, and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. The families of Antonio and Nathan were devastated.
Horrendous. I mean, I don't know how many times that I get up in a given day and just still can't believe it happened. I mean, it's just so horrendous. It's crazy.
The verdict was just. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. Barbeau at 36 years old and Pop at 31. Is there any chance of forgiveness for someone so young who committed such a crime? Surely not. Barbara's memory deserves to be honored, and we must remember that true crime is not just about the criminal, it's about the victim. If you thought this case was gruesome, wait until you hear about Kipling Kinkle, a disturbed 15-year-old student teetering on the edge of chaos. Kinkle could have been a better student, but his problematic behaviors were already straining his relationship with his high school, Thurston. One day, he was simply expelled. The reason? A loaded weapon was found in his locker the day before. Was this a clear sign of what was to come? We will never know. When Kinkle returned home, his father confronted him about his reckless behavior, scolding him for the expulsion and threatening to enroll him in a military school. Fear and resentment was palpable in Kinkle's demeanor. As night fell, Kinkle, still filled with rage and holding the gun, went to confront his father. His father had his back turned. Kinkle simply raised the gun and shot him in the back of the head, leaving his lifeless body on the floor. Kinkle covered his father's inert body and dragged it to the bathroom, covering it with a blanket. Afterward, he sat and waited for his mother's return. When she arrived home, completely unaware of what had happened, she decided to enter the house through the garage. Kinkle was waiting to ambush her. Without hesitation, he shot her twice in the back of the head, 3 times in the face, and once in the heart. Adrenaline and fear surged through Kinkle's body. His parents had become victims of a brutal murder. He was responsible. His life would never be the same. Kipling drove to his high school in his mother's car the next day, thirsting for revenge. He concealed 5 weapons under a trench coat, 2 knives, and 3 handguns. Chaos erupted at his high school. Kinkle mercilessly gunned down 4 people, including his parents, and injured 25 others during the shooting. Fortunately, the police arrived and Kinkle was quickly apprehended. Even so, he didn't stop himself from attacking a police officer, apparently desperate to end his misery.
This stuff here, is this stuff you brought? Is that your backpack? Why did you do that?
Charged with 4 murders and attempted murders, his fate was sealed. Kipling pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 111 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Cases like these leave a hollow feeling, but what happens when a toddler is involved? Like in the case of Dylan Shoemaker, a wayward young man overcome by his impulsiveness and lifestyle. 16-year-old Dylan lived alongside his single mother and recent high school girlfriend, Ashley Smith, with her 2 young children in Springville. It's worth noting that neither of the 2 children was Dylan's biological offspring. Could this have influenced the decisions he made? The incident occurred at night, when Dylan was taking care of Ashley's children while she was off working. Everything was fine until the older son, 2-year-old Austin, started crying inconsolably. Shoemaker wasn't prepared for this situation. His nervousness and irritation escalated with every cry from the poor child. Dylan made his decision. to silent Austin for good. Impulsively, he grabbed a pillow and repeatedly hit him on the head. The blows caused severe trauma to little Austin, ending his short life. Dylan was arrested and immediately put on trial. He was convicted of second-degree murder. Text messages implicating Dylan in sexual activities and drug sales were later discovered while he was taking care of Ashley's children. Furthermore, while in custody, he called his mother and said that he was a young white man who only needed to cry to win the sympathy of the jury. Curious, right? Well, Dylan was sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, brace yourself to hear something equally as chilling. The case of 15-year-old Gregory Ramos, the killer of his own mother. Imagine that your life could change due to a heated argument about a terrible grade. Filled with resentment and anger, Gregory exploded against his mom, Gail, after she reprimanded him for a school grade, strangling her to death. Nervous, Ramos hid his mother's body in the family's van and quickly drove to the nearest church, where he buried her. Feeling overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Ramos called his friends, 19-year-old Dylan Seglerich and 20-year-old Brian Porras, to help him stage a robbery at his house in a desperate attempt to cover up the murder. Fortunately, Gail's body was found. Justice was swift for the trio. Gregory Ramos pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, corpse abuse, and evidence tampering. The court sentenced him to 45 years with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
There are so many conversations that I want to have with her, but now cannot. I'll never be able to ask her how she met my father or what happened to her in New York. Because of my actions, I will never get to truly know my mom. Not only have I stolen my mother from myself, but from everybody else as well.
Seglerich and Porras faced the consequences of their involvement. Charged as adults with accessory after the fact to first-degree murder, they were held accountable for their actions. While Porras was released, Seglerich remains behind bars with a $200,000 bond at the Volusia County Jail. Some cases leave you wondering, how could anything be worse? Much like Nehemiah Griego, a mentally unstable young man who murdered his entire family. One night, driven by deep hatred towards his mother and uncontrollable suicidal thoughts, Nehemiah decided to end the lives of his entire family, those whom he should have loved and protected. First, he shot his mother, Sarah Griego, with a rifle, killing her instantly. His younger brother, Zephaniah, woke up and panicked upon witnessing the horrific scene. His brother revealed that he had killed their mother and then proceeded to shoot him, killing him as well. Afterward, he entered the bedroom shared by his two younger sisters. They, terrified and afraid, witnessed how their brother ended their lives. Following this, he waited for his father, Greg, to arrive. When his father came home, Nehemiah greeted him with 2 deadly shots. After eliminating his entire family, Griego headed to the nearest church with 2 rifles in the trunk of his car. The pastor received him, but immediately became suspicious of the young Nehemiah's story. The pastor called 911. The bodies were found, and Griego was arrested and soon brought to trial. By pleading guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder and 3 counts of child abuse resulting in death, he was ultimately sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences plus 7 consecutive years with the life sentences.
I am sorry for taking our parents and our sins. I wish I can take it back.
It's truly unnerving that young people are capable of such brutality, much like Ellen Fryer. 15-year-old Ellen manipulated her 19-year-old boyfriend, Gavin Curtis McFarland, to commit a murder. Their target, Ellen's father, Aaron Fryer, aged 50. What could have truly driven Ellen to turn against her father? We don't know. As night fell, Aaron lay asleep on his sofa, unaware of what would happen. Ellen and her boyfriend, without mercy, viciously attacked him with a baseball bat, crushing his skull, savagely ending his life. The police arrived the next day. Apparently, neighbors had heard the commotion. They found Aaron's lifeless body. Fryer and Gavin were not in the house. The police found them together not far from the crime scene. The authorities took them in for questioning. The lack of physical evidence led to an investigation mainly based on interrogations. Fortunately, Ellen Fryer broke down and confessed to her father's murder.
There was a few times when he was sober and I just don't know.
It's okay. You can be upset.
I'm having a breakdown and I'm really sorry.
You what?
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
She was sentenced to 25 years in prison. On the other hand, Gavin Curtis McFarland received life imprisonment with a minimum of 25 years before the possibility of parole. Other killers, like 17-year-old Tia Skinner, seemed to have different reasons to plan murder, apparently love. Tia was in a relationship with Jonathan Kurtz, a pairing that proved to be deadly. Her adoptive parents, Paul and Mara Skinner, disapproved of their daughter's romance and stood in their way. This fueled resentment in the deadly couple. It all happened at night. Jonathan Kurtz and his accomplice, James Preston, both masked, stealthily entered the house ready to murder Tia's parents, Paul and Mara Skinner. While all this was happening, Tia was downstairs in the living room, watching television with her older brother, who was visiting, distracting him while the plan was executed. Paul and Mara were repeatedly stabbed in their bedroom by their masked attackers. Bleeding and close to death, Paul Skinner confronted the killers, chasing them through the house, but succumbed to his injuries and died helplessly on the floor. Fortunately, Mara managed to survive. Meanwhile, the deceitful Tia called 911. Immediately, the police began their investigation. Soon, they started to doubt Tia's claims. Panic gripped her.
She designed the plan, and although she didn't climb those stairs that horrific evening and use a knife to stab two individuals 25 times, she certainly aided and abetted in that offense.
The investigation was successful. Tia was exposed. She and her accomplices were sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Terrible, isn't it? How evil can lurk even within a family. Much like Tyler Hadley, a 17-year-old guilty of the murder of his parents, Blake and Mary Jo Hadley. What led him to commit such an insidious act? A party. Tyler posted on Facebook that he was going to throw a party at his house. The problem? His parents. His plan was set. First, Hadley locked his loyal Labrador dog in the bathroom out of fear that it might defend his parents. Then he went to his room and took 3 ecstasy pills. Tyler initiated his massacre. Driven by drugs, he first attacked his mother using the back of a claw hammer. Upon hearing the screams, his father rushed to the scene. Upon finding his wife dead and his son covered in blood, Blake fell victim to fear. His son took advantage of that, dealing him a deadly blow. With cold precision, Tyler hid the bodies and any evidence that could incriminate him. Afterward, he financed the party he had organized using his parents' credit cards. As the hours passed, the party began. Guests arrived. Some even noticed the disturbing smell of death. Surprisingly, Tyler boasted about his crime to several partygoers. Taking a walk with his friend, Michael Mandel, Tyler confessed his heinous acts. Incredibly, Mandel didn't run away. Out of fear, he stayed, acting as if nothing had happened.
He told me if I look at it enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood, and that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
After you saw this scene, what did you do?
I was in shock. I was sitting down. I didn't know what to do.
Later, away from danger, Mandel managed to contact the police and report the crime. Tyler faced the courts. Convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder, he received a sentence of life imprisonment without parole.
It is hereby the judgment and sentence of the court that as to both counts 1 and 2, the defendant be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Unhinged criminals seem to hide in plain sight until the worst has happened, much like these cases.